What is the heartbeat of Canlis?
It's less about the food than the critics say it is. People are first.
As you're growing up in this city, and especially working in the industry of the city, Canlis has this kind of aura around it, about it being the pinnacle of fine dining.
They get to that position because they can cook. But what makes them good in the position will be if they can lead.
How would you describe yourself as a leader?
Well, eat last, get on the first helicopter into combat, be an expert at your business, know what you're doing.
Is there one thing that keeps you up at night?
The rule of law and democracy. I think it's in some peril. Vote for either party, but only vote for people of character. And if we don't, we're going to lose our democracy.
There is something about Tetris which is creating order out of chaos.
It's on 65 platforms, more than that, more than 500 million downloads. It's 35 years old plus.
We just celebrated our 40th anniversary.
And it's still addictive for people. How do you explain that?
Most of the other games are destructive, and this game is constructive. The moment I'm supposed to die, I say, no, I'm not going, I still have stuff to do. The vision is to create a world in which humanity and nature live in harmony. That is something everybody can agree to.
Thank you for joining us for this special hour of On the Record. Over the past year, I've had the privilege of sitting down with people who make us think, who move our hearts, including an artist you may have seen on stage. He is the longest-serving male principal in the history of the Pacific Northwest Ballet. Lucien Postlethwaite, now in his final season, is reflecting on a career that has taken him around the world, and he looks ahead, ready to embrace a new life offstage.
One, two, three, four.
When I'm on stage performing, I am the conduit to whatever wants to be expressed in the moment, whether that's a character, whether that is a story. I allow myself, I surrender. I just surrender to the moment. There's a moment of being completely suspended in time, in space, experiencing transcendence, experiencing this unity with the audience.
That's a gift.
It's so special.
What is it like to be in your final season on stage? It's even hard for me to say it out loud. What?
It's so much. It's wonderful. It's so wonderful, and I feel so fortunate to be able to design the end of my career while I'm at the height of my game.
When did you know that this was going to be sort of your passion?
I came out of the womb, as I like to say, dancing. My folks noticed that. They saw that I had this joy of dance in me, so they put me in gymnastics and ballet and tap. Ballet was the thing that I just felt the most free. It got more challenging in my older years, like as a teenager. I always felt a bit different, and that was challenging.
In what ways?
I was really in tune with my purpose and my passion from a very young age, and that was different from a lot of other young people. Also, I was the only boy that I knew who was dancing.
So from Santa Cruz ballet schools to PNB, what was that journey? How did you end up here in the Northwest?
I went to the School of American Ballet. I auditioned there and moved there when I was 16.
Whoa. By yourself, 16 in New York City?
Yeah.
Wow.
The competition, the intensity of that place forged me in a way, and then made my way out here to Pacific Northwest Ballet.
It sounds like it was a breeze for you. It couldn't have been. Couldn't have been.
No.
What were some of the challenges?
I definitely went down paths that pulled me away from my direction. I had an opportunity with the New York City Ballet and was hired as an apprentice with them. And so I got in some trouble with the school and got kicked out from the school, which meant that I lost my apprenticeship. And this was devastating because that was, at the time, all I knew as far as my dream.
How did you recorrect?
A lot of falling on my face, metaphorically and literally. We learn from a very young age to pick yourself back up, learn the lessons from whatever caused you to fall, and keep moving forward.
I really want you to touch on the aspects of dance that we don't see.
I think what the audience doesn't see is the level of inner work that happens. A perfectionist mindset, major self-criticism, doubt, insecurity, these things that we have a really good way of masking and we don't present on stage. I found myself dealing with a lot of anxiety and pretty depressed for a point in my life. My longevity, I would credit to that inner world work because it's a lot of getting out of my own way, challenging my limiting beliefs. There comes a point where I can only train my body so far, and then there becomes an emotional element, a spiritual element that comes through.
When you look at your career, do you feel you're the best you've ever been right now?
Yeah, I do. When I moved back from Monaco, I moved back to Seattle. My plan was to dance for 2 more years, and that was 8 years ago.
Must be a great example to other dancers who look at your career and look at how exceptional you are still and think that they can do it also.
I believe that by showing up wholly, with the whole heart, all of me fully invested, that in a way is a form of leadership.
Now, you are a life coach. How did dance move you to that space?
I had an awakening that I have been in a role of service my whole life, that I give myself to others, whether it's on stage, whether it's coaching, and how do I translate my service as a ballet dancer into one that supports other people realizing their dreams. And I will also credit my grandmother. Oh my goodness. Maybe 3 years ago, I called her because I was processing sort of the end of this career. She said, you know, Lucien, I have always seen the special light in you. And she's like, I didn't know anything about ballet, but I saw that it was a portal for your light. And she just affirmed me that she's like, when you stop dancing, that light doesn't go anywhere. That light carries on with you. I learned then, I just have to learn how to translate my light. That like ballet has been my language, and I just need to learn another.
But I think it's just really special that you get to choose the moment of your exit.
Me too.
Versus having your health or circumstance choose it for you.
Every day I wake up and I thank my body. I say thank you. Thank you for giving me this life. Thank you for, I don't take it for granted.
What do you want the rest of us to remember about this extraordinary career you've had here?
If there's a performance where we have connected, and that is a moment of deep, deep connection. You have felt seen in some way by me, and I have felt seen in some way by you. When I know that I'm so connected with the audience, those moments are so special to me.
Lucien Postlethwaite will take his final curtain call this summer with a special celebration performance set for June of 2026. And up next, the man behind the most played video game on the planet, Hank Rogers, talks about the historic deal he made with Russia to bring Tetris to the world and why he's now on a new mission to change the planet. It is a game that became a global phenomenon after a video game maker cut a deal with the Soviet Union and then teamed up with Nintendo. Today, Hank Rogers is celebrating more than 50 years of Tetris, embarking on a new mission to save the planet.
Tetris is probably the game played by most people in the world. There is something about Tetris which is creating order out of chaos. And I think that that is a pleasure center for people.
For people who don't know the story behind Tetris and your connection, give us the Cliff Notes version.
I was a publisher of computer games in Japan, looking for computer games around the world. I was at a Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, And I found Tetris there.
And what was it about this game that you said this is going to be a huge hit?
Well, when it came to the Tetris machine, I played, I went away and did other games, and then I came back and played again. Then when I came back for the fourth time, you're only supposed to play each game once because there's so many games. When I came back for the fourth time, I knew there was something special about this game. It was so simple, and yet it was so like, oh, I want to play more. And I was right.
I still see falling blocks in my dreams.
They've now made a movie about how it is that you connected with the creator, Alexei, in Russia. I mean, it's a very complicated, very risky, kind of gutsy move. How did you put that all together?
Made a handshake deal with Mr. Arakawa, the president of Nintendo. And I said, Mr. Arakawa, you should include Tetris with Game Boy. And he said, well, why should I include Tetris? I've got Mario. And I said, if you want little boys to buy your Game Boy, include Mario. If you want everyone to buy your Game Boy, include Tetris. So we made a deal right there. I went to the Soviet embassy, got a tourist visa. 2 days later, I was on a plane to Moscow. And the rest is history.
It's on 65 platforms, more than that, more than 500 million downloads. It's 35 years old plus.
We just celebrated our 40th anniversary.
And it's still addictive for people. How do you explain that?
Most of the other games are destructive, and this game is constructive. And so I think that has a lot to do with why it appeals to women. And over half of our players are women.
Did you know it would be the game changer, literally, it turned out to be?
None of us did.
So how does a video game developer move into this sphere of saving the world, protecting the climate and the earth?
So it's 2005. I find myself in an ambulance with what I found out later was 100% blockage of the Widowmaker.
There's a reason they call it a Widowmaker.
Yes, 95% of the people who have this particular malady die. So I'm the lucky 5%.
Incredible. That was life-changing for you.
Oh, it was life-changing. Are you kidding me? The moment I'm supposed to die, I say, no, I'm not going. I still have stuff to do. And I decided I was going to find my missions in life. And the first mission came to me in the back of the newspaper. I said, oh, by the way, we're going to kill all the coral in the world by the end of the century. I'm going, that's crazy. And I said, no, we're not allowed to do that. That is a disaster of biblical proportions. What's causing it is carbon dioxide. So mission number one is to end the use of carbon-based fuel.
Blue Planet Foundation was born out of that.
Yes.
And it is now part of the Blue Planet Alliance.
Right. The vision is to create a world in which humanity and nature live in harmony. That is something everybody can agree to.
So what does that look like in terms of how you create that, how you execute that in the world in which we currently exist, where carbon fuels are destroying the earth?
It's so simple, I can't believe that people don't get it. It's all about just making a decision. I decided for the Blue Planet Foundation to end the use of carbon-based fuel in Hawaii, because Hawaii is where I live. The biggest use of carbon-based fuel in Hawaii is just making electricity. Now, Hawaii is the mecca of renewable energy. We've got the best solar, we've got trade winds, which means we have 95% of the time the wind is steadily blowing from the same direction, and we have geothermal, we have volcanoes. I mean, this is like boundless energy under the Big Island. Our big success was in 2015 when we passed a mandate. Hawaii was the first state to have a mandate of 100% renewable energy, in our case by 2045. Hawaii's at 36% today.
36%?
Renewable energy.
Incredible. And other states have followed suit?
California came up with 100% by 2045. Washington State soon followed with 100% by 2040, because you guys don't like to lose to California.
Especially?
Especially California.
What happens if we don't do this?
We suffer. The world suffers. Our children, grandchildren suffer.
There are some in Washington who are talking about turning back regulations of the EPA, undoing climate change policy. That's real.
It doesn't matter. You don't believe in climate change. Some people think the earth is flat. You can say whatever you want. The evidence is against you. Climate change is going to be solved by us by the people, not the United Nations, but the United People. I'm a gamer. I hate to lose. And when it comes to doing something like fixing climate change, I still hate to lose. And so I will fight and fight and fight until I die to achieve my missions in life.
Tetris pioneer turned climate visionary. You can learn more about Hank Rogers' passion to save the world through his Blue Planet Alliance. And up next, a man who spent much of his life on the battlefield. Retired four-star Army General Barry McCaffrey talks about honor, legacy, and why character matters. His life is defined by service and dedication to country. Retired four-star Army General Barry McCaffrey's 3 decades in the military included 4 combat tours, earning him 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, and 2 Silver Stars. He shares his journey from the battlefield to the White House to shaping the next generation of military leaders at West Point and beyond.
This is ring hop at West Point, and Jill was 17 and I was 18, and I had asked her to marry me on the first date.
How did you know?
I don't know. I was smitten, obviously. Both my wife and I are Army brats. We grew up in Army families. We lived all over the world. So we both felt comfortable in a life of military service, which is what we did essentially for 33 years.
You served 2 combat tours in Vietnam. You were wounded 3 times. You have received 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, 2 Silver Stars for Valor. Those experiences, how did that change you?
As a company commander in Vietnam in 1968, there was a high probability that you'd be killed or wounded while serving. You're crawling around the mud with a sack full of hand grenades, shooting it out with somebody 20 feet away, that this is not a glamorous life. You know, we lived like animals, we dug like moles, we suffered significant casualties.
So a lot of what you went through as a young soldier, young officer, molded the type of leader you became.
Oh, no question. I'm grateful to be promoted to the rank of 2-star general, but my mindset is that of an infantry company commander. So I try and remember what it's like in the dark and the rain and the freezing sleet and under gunfire and artillery fire, what these orders mean when you give them.
How would you describe yourself as a leader?
Well, you know, eat last, get on the first helicopter into combat, be an expert at your business, know what you're doing. That's the secret to leadership effectiveness.
During Operation Desert Storm, you led the 24th Infantry in the famous left hook maneuver. For people who don't know what the left hook maneuver is and how significant that was in the Gulf War, walk us through that.
Well, we ended up with 500,000 Allied forces, to include Egyptians and Jordanians and Saudis on our side, and we attacked one of the largest militaries in the world, the Iraqis. They were like tethered goats waiting for us to fall on them. They had no idea what we were capable of. My division had a unique responsibility. It was the left hook. So we attacked a couple of 300 miles into Iraq unopposed. If a division had appeared in the middle of Moscow during a parade, they could not have been more surprised. It brought the war to an end with minimal loss of life on the Iraqi part.
Was that your idea, the left hook?
No, it was General Norman Schwarzkopf. With his genius IQ and his volatile personality, we were all slightly afraid of him.
He had a huge personality during the Gulf War.
Yeah, no question. But he was also brilliant.
What lessons did you learn from working with him that you think are really relevant today?
Don't go to war unless you have to. You have no idea of the potential outcomes. There's never been in Desert Storm a more successful combat campaign that resulted in less political wins. When you pick up the cudgel and take military action, you're taking a high-risk move.
Did we learn from that when you look at what's happening today?
Maybe not. When you substitute political objectives that are not achievable by military power, you get in a position where you can't achieve your outcome in less than multiple generations. That may have been what we could have accomplished in Afghanistan if we told the American people we're going to be there for 30 years and here's what we're trying to do.
You spent some time in Washington, D.C. working for presidents, and you also worked on national drug policy.
I sure did. It was one of the most absorbing 5.5 years of my life. We had tremendous impact. We increased investment in research and development dramatically. We got a lot of drug treatment programs funded and organized, and we, most importantly, worked on drug prevention messages. And the message was, Mom and Dad, if you want to fight a war on drugs, start with your own kitchen table.
You talked about partisanship during your time there. Things have changed dramatically in Washington, D.C. since you were there, haven't they?
Oh, it's really shameful. It's like nothing in the world that we've seen since 1860, the lead up to the Civil War. So almost nothing gets done that doesn't immediately turn into a bitter partisan divide. Our Constitution is the shortest, oldest governing document in the world. But it only works when all of us agree to the myth of these constitutional values. So I think we're in trouble.
Is there one thing that keeps you up at night?
The rule of law and democracy. I think it's in some peril. My message has always been, get out there and vote, understand who the candidates are, vote for either party, but only vote for people of character. And if we don't, we're going to lose our democracy.
Your career has required long deployments, a lot of time away from home, so many sacrifices. How have you done it?
I was thrilled by the opportunity to be a battalion, brigade, division commander, a theater commander. My wife was too. We're both Army brats. We grew up in the military, and I certainly was keenly aware of the high probability that I'd get killed or maimed in combat. Jill raised a family on her own. She would marshal them up and leave quarters and fly home to her mother in Southern California and did a great job.
When you look back over your career, what do you consider your most significant contribution?
When I take on a responsibility, I try and leave it better off than where I found it. My ability to have participated in keeping the country safe are the most important things I've done. My wife and I, though, our enduring legacy is 3 children and 6 grandchildren who are people of character. That's our gift.
General McCaffrey is now a military analyst for NBC. He often appears on our program, King 5 News. He says the most prized attribute of a military officer is objectivity, understanding what's at stake for the American people. And next, it was another American who shocked the world, Pope Leo XIV. What his selection means from Seattle Archbishop Paul Etienne, who sat down with us for his first television interview in years. The date was May 8th, 2025. Cardinal Robert Prevost was elected as the first ever American-born pontiff, choosing the name Pope Leo XIV. His selection prompted an outpouring of congratulations from around the world, including right here in the Northwest. Seattle Archbishop Paul Etienne called it one of Pope Francis' last surprises. He sat down with us for his first television interview in 6 years to talk about faith and the significance of this moment.
I was born into Catholicism. I have it in my DNA. Helping people come to their own personal encounter with Christ, to come to their own deeper understanding of God's love for them, of God's will for them. That's the gospel I preach. And that's what gives life to my ministry.
How do you see the election of a new pope shaping the direction of the Catholic Church globally?
Pope Francis, who is known as the Pope of Surprises, this will be one of his last surprises. We want a man of prayer, a man of holiness, a man of the capacity to be in this world stage and to have a credible moral voice. That's what Pope Francis was known for.
And also for his progressive reforms. Do you expect the next pope will carry on those ideals?
Pope Francis didn't so much change the teachings of the church as much as he stretched our imaginations and, yes, comfort zones of how we are called to live our faith in the world today.
At a time when politically things are so polarized, do you feel that that's a factor in drawing people in?
There was a quote from Pope John Paul II that said, "Affective collegiality leads to effective collegiality," which basically means you've got to build basic human relationships before you have the difficult conversations to resolve your differences. Our world needs to recover this willingness to respect one another as a brother and sister with equal dignity, and that we can have meaningful conversations about things we disagree with that can lead to very good solutions.
I want to talk about the new law that's on the books in our state. It's going to require clergy, even in confession, to report child neglect and abuse. And I know you've condemned this.
The church is already doing everything we can, and have been for the past several decades, to respond to victim survivors when they come to us. We've had policies on our books for decades requiring our priests to report abuse when they come to knowledge of it, except within the seal of the sacrament of confession.
Historically, the church has struggled with this issue of child sex abuse. Tens of thousands of children reportedly have been abused within the Catholic Church.
Yes.
And so how and why should people trust that the church will act to defend against the abuse of children?
I'm glad you used the word historically, because this is a historical moment in the life of the church for which we are ashamed. I mean, they weren't just sins, they were crimes committed against young people. And we can't apologize for that enough. But I think to answer the question, we now have decades of hard work in place. We can point to specific improvements that have been made in recent decades. I would go so far as to say that our institutions are some of the safest places for young people in our society today.
At the end of the day, you want your clergy to follow God, not man. The division of church and state is also a factor, and confession is sacred.
Confession is definitely sacred. We want our people to continue to have trust and confidence in the sacrament of reconciliation, better known as confession. It's between the penitent and God. Our church law, canon law, also says that if a priest violates that seal, he's automatically excommunicated from the church. Our priests have told me, Archbishop, I'll go to prison before I allow the state to coerce any such information from me. And I think all of our priests feel that way.
What do you think the church is doing right or could be doing more of to welcome and minister to the LGBTQ+ community?
I think there's sensitivities that we don't want to use labels. We just want people to know you're welcome. because you're a child of God.
What role do you see looking ahead for women? What do you envision for women in church leadership or in the ministry?
We need more women engaged in the ministries of the church. We need more women engaged in the decision-making of the church and the governance of the church. And we seek to do that in a way that doesn't diminish the role of the hierarchy, but elevates the role of the baptized.
In our lifetime, will we see a female become a priest in the Catholic Church?
I doubt it. Just with where the stage of conversation is around the ordination of women as deacons, I think it's a whole nother thing to get to ordaining women as priests in the Catholic tradition.
What is your message to young people?
I think our young people are looking for meaning. We are here to bring the life of the risen Christ into the world. We are here to share the gospel that He came into the world to live and to preach. And those that are willing to have that conversation with us, to allow us to bring that light of Christ into their world and into whatever darkness they're walking in, that's why we're here, and we welcome them with open arms.
Still to come, the cost of speaking truth to power. Dr. Ben Danielson, a beloved pediatrician who worked on behalf of children across the Pacific Northwest for decades, until he abruptly resigned, filing suit against Seattle Children's for discrimination and retaliation. His first TV interview since winning that case is next. At the start of the year, we heard from a beloved pediatrician who led Seattle's Odessa Brown Children's Clinic for 2 decades. In 2020, he resigned in protest, suing the hospital for systemic racism and retaliation. A jury found the hospital guilty, awarding him $21 million in damages. In his first TV interview since winning that case, Dr. Danielson opens up about what that victory means for marginalized people and the personal cost of speaking truth to power. How are you?
Trying to live the experiences a little bit as honestly as possible. Trying to also come to grips with how hard it is to get re-triggered with a couple of decades worth of trauma. I would still say it's also in the space of a place that you have this love for, this sense that sometimes you love the person or the place, even when you know that they're causing you harm.
What was your experience at Seattle Children's? In what ways did racism manifest?
I described it once as sort of being in a large pot of water and having a heating source start to sort of heat up that water and make it come to a boil, and experiencing that as something that is all around you, sometimes directed exactly at you, but being essentially submerged in it. It was a combination of some very direct, very personal, very, very traumatic experiences, in addition to a number of experiences that I was watching happen to colleagues and peers, in addition to policies and direct actions that were impacting, maybe most importantly, these amazing families. One of the things that was also issue in the trial was the CFO in the CEO's office in a group of people where I was the only black person, saying that they did not believe in institutional racism. How it impacts somebody like me trying to see if a hospital can still change is really powerful, because the silence that follows that means that there's not a challenge to that statement. And in a space where data, science, and knowledge is supposed to really matter, that is a very damning kind of condition.
And how did the hospital's response or lack of a response to your concerns around this impact you in the workplace and others of color?
There's a lot of times when your own self-confidence is undermined in such a way that you just wonder, is this all in my head? Is this something that is really happening? Did I really just hear that? Did that really just happen? They talk about gaslighting. I don't think I knew that term until a few years ago, but that was definitely a component of that experience. I was surprised by the ways in which sometimes a direct harm brought me a sense of shame, of self-recrimination, in addition to feeling outraged, in addition to feeling a sense of personal anger. The effect of being in environments like that is that you feel very much alone. You could be around other people suffering similarly, and you can also still feel very isolated, very alone. There was one jury member who identified as African American. What she said was she would not allow people to substitute with the term N-word, because she wanted people to really hear the fullness of that word and actually understand that that is what was happening, that there was that word, not a substitute for it, not some other phrase that was easier on the ears, that there was that word that was being used. It was not only that that word was used in direct reference to me, but it was used also as part of almost a lecture by this person, that he was saying that there were good N-words and there were bad N-words, that there were these two categories of us in this country, and that in some ways there were the ones that seemed to behave themselves and followed along and didn't stir up things or cause trouble, and then there's others like me who were just identified as a problem. And to me, it was the lack of response from leadership, from that hospital culture that was its own harm, in addition to this hateful, dehumanizing language that was coming at me from this one person.
The jury was predominantly not black and brown.
Yeah.
It was predominantly female,
Yeah.
8 members.
Yeah.
They did seem to understand the impact of the use of that word.
What these women told me was that even if their own lived experience did not connect to this extreme denigration of being called as a black person in this country, what they did understand absolutely was what it looked like and felt like to experience workplace hostility, to experience oppression in the workplace, to experience that kind of marginalization.
And what did that mean to you?
For whatever else happens, for that moment, there was a jury, there was a community of people who understood, who recognized, and who, most importantly, for an institution that resisted accountability, held that place accountable for their actions.
What is the message do you think it sends to other institutions, hospitals and beyond?
You can't hide behind the idea that, oh, it's everywhere, so we have no responsibility whatsoever for what happens in our place. You can't hide behind the idea that we just didn't think it was that big a deal, and you shouldn't be making that big a deal out of it. When you are faced with the evidence and the facts that it is happening in your space, in your moment, in a way that you are able to control and you do not control it, you are accountable for those actions and the impacts of those actions.
Or you are culpable.
You're culpable.
No appeals or major reforms have been announced at Seattle Children's tied to the Danielson verdict. And still to come, a new chapter for a Seattle institution. The famed Canlis restaurant takes a gamble, putting its legacy in the hands of a homegrown chef. It has stood atop Queen Anne Hill for some 75 years as a destination for presidents, celebrities, and generations of locals celebrating life's milestones. This year, Canlis began a new chapter, choosing for the very first time a Seattle-born chef to lead its kitchen. 33-year-old James Huffman and owner Mark Canlis sat down with us, sharing their core philosophy they say is at the center of their success.
What is the heartbeat of Canlis?
It's less about the food than the critics say it is. The people are first.
Welcome to Wednesday night.
It's a lot of work to run a restaurant, and I'm never done with my work. But there's this discipline of sort of walking out into the dining room, and you start talking to the guest, and you realize that's what matters. Hey, there's something about my life tonight that matters to me, and could this restaurant carve out space for that? Could we slow down time? That is what Canlis is trying to do. It's trying to create a safe place so we can hallmark these moments in our lives.
Order fire, bar salad's lit.
The highlight is to get to work with this team of people who are committed to us as humans, as individuals, and who every night exhibit a level of love for the guests that I think is heroic and exceptional.
As you're like growing up in this city and especially working in the industry of the city, like Canlis has this kind of aura around it, about it being the pinnacle of fine dining. Yeah, I knew that was something that I wanted to be a part of.
I mean, you've never been an executive chef before.
No.
This is, just to do it here first is crazy.
Yeah, it's a wild story.
So when James first came to you, he'd been working with Canlis for 9 years. What was your first reaction? Did you think he had the stuff?
Is it okay to say no?
Of course it is.
James came to me and said, can I talk to you? And he said, I'm gonna put my name in the hat for this job.
You had a huge list of people interested in this job for executive chef, probably larger than ever.
So in the end, there were about 74 different chefs from the United States and around the world who applied for the job.
I was up against some extreme competition for sure.
There was just so much talent.
People that used to cook for presidents.
People who already owned Michelin-starred restaurants.
No pressure.
Yeah, I mean, you can only imagine, right?
I think a chef's job is principally about people.
Nice. They're like a world of difference compared to yesterday.
They get to that position because they can cook. But what makes them good in the position will be if they can lead.
Chef Slow, 3 salmon pork.
Slow, 3 salmon pork.
I didn't think he was ready.
I'll show you when you're ready to cut them. Let me show you how I'd cut them.
But over time, we got to see who he was. Sort of the man, the character, the chef, the leader, the human, and we fell in love with that person.
Tell me about the moment that you found out.
It's a funny story because I was about 30 minutes late to that meeting. Not a good look. And in the moment, I almost had no reaction because I was just kind of stunned. And I think the most special moment came shortly after.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you like to know the new executive chef of Canlis Restaurant?
Tell me about when you made the announcement, the reaction of the staff.
Like explosive.
The guy sitting in the room, it's Jim.
It made me feel so honored. They played such a huge part in making it possible for me to be the next executive chef. It's another memory I'll definitely cherish for a long time.
We just have another 145 on the books today, which seems to be our new trending numbers, and I love it.
To find someone who will champion the mission of Canlis is scary. And I think we did it.
5 o'clock solo diner, VIP in the bar.
To have someone born up the street and who grew up cooking in this town be shepherding this restaurant in the future. It's such a privilege.
All right, chefs, let's have a great service and keep the promise. Chef! Hi, guys.
How do you plan to leave your mark on the legacy that is Canlis with your food?
I want food to always be important. But to make the food important really starts with how we treat people inside our walls. But you've also been straining this through like a chinois, right?
Correct.
I just want to be a good leader.
It's a rule to the game that the food is delicious. It's not a strategy for winning the game. The strategy is that a bunch of humans greet you at the door and see you for who you are and embrace you and say, oh, let us take care of you tonight because I know it's hard out there. In here, let us just make one little moment in your world as special as we possibly can.
What do you want the legacy of Canlis to be?
I really want to inspire people to turn toward one another. My job is not to make sure that Canlis is here tomorrow. I don't have a crystal ball. My job is to show up and be present to you and to my neighbors and to my staff and do the very best I can. That to me is the gift of working in a restaurant, is you experience that every night. A little piece of you is given away, and then a huge piece is given back. I think in some way a restaurant reminds us to be human. That sort of forces us to be at the table together and forces us to slow down, and we all need that.
Looking ahead to 2026, who are the people who will make an impact, be the change makers who leave us inspired? Theirs are the voices we will share with you on the record in 2026. And to everyone who has so generously given us their time this past year, thank you for trusting us to share your stories. We will see you in the new year.